Hi, thank you so much for joining us for Volume 8 of our Female Voices series. We're really excited to have you here with us today as our guest. Please, could you start off by introducing yourself and a bit about your career path so far?
Thank you, Sim. It's very good to be here, and thank you so much for inviting me. My name is Alina Mikhaleva. I'm working in a virtual reality field for about 8 years now. Before that, I had a career path in media and marketing. So through the media, I gradually transitioned to be very interested in different types of technology that allow us to interact in a different way. And when I first experienced 360 video, not even VR, through a mobile phone, for me, it was the beginning of a long journey where I'm looking for the next formats, how we're going to communicate. And of course, I can say that now in 2022, we're in a very different place compared to when I started in 2014, 15. And I'm very excited to be on this journey, continuing to discover new ways of communication. So I have a small company called Less Media Group. And as a team, we work on helping to distribute the best narrative works in virtual reality. And also, we have a long-standing partnership with Engage XR platform, where our team helps to coordinate and organize virtual events for different teams and companies. So on daily basis, I go for work to virtual reality, and that's been my reality for the last 2 years.
Sounds really interesting, especially because of how much VR has grown over the years as well, and how it's being immersed into so many different industries. So that must keep you super busy, and it must be expanding at a phenomenal rate.
I think that it's been very interesting to see first the transition, because I started working in media and in news media around 2007, 2008. So that was the time when the shift towards YouTube and new media and then different social platforms was happening. So all the traditional players that are coming from traditional TV broadcast, they were concerned and looking how they can evolve and find themselves in these new platforms. And for me, that gradually transitioned into VR as a completely different technology, because the main difference that I can summarize as a result of my 8 years of exploration is that virtual reality headset gives you the sense of presence, deeper sense of presence that it's harder to achieve with other types of media. And it basically kind of lands you in this virtual spot in the location where you are. And if you understand that you are together with real people in real time, exploring space together, absolutely different sense of presence can happen at this moment. And for this industry, of course, the pandemic has become a huge accelerator, because in February, March 2020, all of us realized that, okay, this is the turning point. We've been in this industry for a long time, but are we actually prepared to take this forward and to provide some communication tools that would really make impact in humans' lives? Because we very quickly understood that Zoom and MS Teams and all the flat formats of communication, they have their own limitations. Yes, they give us the freedom to connect from different parts of the world, from our homes, but at the same time, they're not giving us the sense of being united, being present with other people in one space, being together. And this is something that we're missing, and this is exactly the part that virtual reality technology can provide if done correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point, because I think we all relied on things like Zoom and Skype as a level of connecting with people, particularly in the pandemic, whether it was for work or even just to talk with friends because of lockdowns. But there was still that absence of a sense of realness coming from that, because it's very clear that it's from a distance. So I guess VR will help replace that sort of gap. And I think with people using VR both for pleasure, like people now can play VR games and pay for experiences, as well as work. What do you think will happen to the depiction of women? Do you think that female characters that are created and presented in VR in particular will still conform to that sort of feminine woman image that we once have in games, for example? How once upon a time they were very perfect hourglass figure, everything was very in place, irrespective of what they were doing and who they were. Do you think it will still adhere to the same sort of standards?
It's a very good question, and thank you for asking that. So one of the things that I enjoyed the most from the transition in my career path from traditional media to this new media format was I moved to Los Angeles at one point where it was the center of the industry, and it was great to see that this new industry was tackling presence of women in the industry and taking this question really serious from the very beginning. It's a very small community of XR professionals that are passionate about this medium. Most of us, we really know each other, and I can confirm that throughout those years, I see continuous effort to bring more women into the technology. And to be honest, we do have quite a lot of women who are becoming leading directors in kind of creating XR experiences. So I'm very happy in kind of that this industry might be much more diverse compared to the more established industries where you have 30, 40 years of legacy and leadership in place that worked in those industries for all these years, and it's much harder to break through in a way. In terms of characters and how this industry is kind of depicting the characters and women in particular, I think that we really need to understand that the technology is not going to rapidly and drastically change something in our perception. So in many ways, VR is just one of the continuation for those paths that were already created. And so if you go to VR chat, for example, where a lot of avatars are really explicit, and some of them are really kind of anime characters. They're kind of very openly sexualized, etc., etc. This, for me, that was quite surprising to see, but a lot of those avatars, they are created by the communities. So once again, maybe we need to turn that not only to the understanding that those are the patterns that the studios are creating, but also how do we educate our users so maybe they're not falling for those patterns and don't start replicating those patterns in those new environments. Because as a logical continuation, we always see that people are replicating something that they're used to, including the vision of women or female characters. But as time progresses, maybe we can just, as an industry, invite them to explore other paths. At the same time, other tendency is that in virtual reality, or I'm not, when I'm talking about virtual reality, I don't only talk about VR headsets, because we need to understand that a lot of those 3D environments, they can access using other devices as well. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's only VR headset. Just VR headset gives you more embodied experience, more immersive experience. So it's like next level of experience in these digital environments. And so it's also becoming much more gender fluid, because if I want to explore different genders, different personalities, I can be a hot dog, I can be a mushroom, I can be anyone. It's very often that we see male kind of men choosing female avatars and exploring their virtual personalities as a different story, or vice versa. So I think that we don't understand exactly how this is going to evolve, because it all relies so deeply on our own representation in those virtual environments. Who do we become when we can be anyone, and this anyone can be gender fluid or non-gender. And that's a kind of a new story in our understanding of the perception of each other.
But I think that's really beautiful, because in the society that we live in now, people identify in different ways. It's not as simple as male or female, man or woman. And as you mentioned, people may choose to be gender fluid or non-binary. And it sounds like the virtual world and with VR, it's ready to embrace that change, which I think is very important in the day and age that we now live in.
I absolutely agree. And I think that is one of the strongest points of virtual reality technology, because you can embody different character. You kind of, that's the closest thing in technology that can bring us to experiencing other person's life, story, being present in the space as a different character. So they're very strong examples, and it's already supported by the science, that if we kind of see ourselves in the body of a different person, and there are great startups that are exploring this in the empathy field, where you, through the experience, you are invited to experience how to be in the kind of chair when you don't move around freely, how that is to be a person of different color, of different heights in the space, when everyone is much taller. So all of those experiences that are not available to us in real life, we can potentially invite people to experience what others are feeling through this technology. And for me, that was always the strongest call. And from the bias perspective, I'm also thinking quite a lot about that, because just imagine that in virtual reality, we all have our avatars. We are choosing how they want to look. We can bring them as close as our real face by uploading our image and creating our own personalized avatars, or we can choose to be a unicorn today, because I feel like a unicorn. How do you make those judgments, those biases that very often come naturally just from seeing person, identifying with this person, some maybe historic background? So a lot of those biases, they come even before verbal communication starts. So in a way, in virtual reality, you are removing that, because you cannot judge by the appearance anymore, because the appearance can be anything, but the voice, the interactions, the nonverbal communication through the body of your avatar, that what's bringing you information. And in a way, I think that the virtual working environment in the future can benefit from that, because you will not be judged by the gender or skin color, because it can be anything. I can be blue unicorn, and what are you going to judge me for?
I think that in itself is so inspiring, because people, like you said, can literally be whoever, whatever they decide to be. And that will be a massive selling factor for so many people, especially in the world where we're working more interactively now, so people can be anywhere in the world. So you sort of touched on various elements, but can you tell us about what it is in VR and about VR that inspires you so much, that sort of led you onto that pathway? And how do you envision the future for VR?
Thank you. That's a great question. So the first introduction to this more immersive kind of experiences, I think that through my career in media, because I was working in marketing for the news broadcaster, right? So in marketing, you are always you always need to be one step forward, right? To understand and to try and understand where the audience is going to go next, because when they come there, your product or your distribution needs to already be there, right? And from the news industry perspective, I just saw this endless chase for the audience, one platform after another. It was Facebook yesterday, now it's Instagram. Oh, it's now back to YouTube, now it's TikTok. And all of a sudden you understand that it's not creating any value. And kind of for me, from the news industry background, very quickly I understood that we're so overwhelmed with information that just traditional patterns of shooting more content that people are not going to work. It's actually creating more distraction, and it's more kind of creating a lot of stress for people in a way. And the fact that any news broadcaster is starting just to throw at you more information through more channels is not going to increase or improve your user experience. So when I first saw 360 video first and then tried VR headset, my thought was that that's the next iteration of the medium, because in the world where I don't trust anyone just because there's so much information thrown at me that I don't understand who's right and who's wrong, the only judgment that I can make is that if I am there. If I'm there, if I can really be present somewhere and understand and see with my own eyes, that's the moment that makes much more impact for me compared to hearing hundreds of voices that are surrounding me. And that's been kind of the story of my evolution with this medium, because I'm studying neuroscience and kind of how the perception really works with our brain. And the virtual reality as a technology is very early days. Though it's kind of, I think, at least the third wave of virtual reality technology and its evolution, it still has a very long way to go. But still, out of all of the mediums, it is the one that is giving you the sense of presence and also the sense of having your body. So if we are comparing that to the internet right now, I can consume information on the internet. I can talk to other people, but mostly for my body, it's a passive experience. Where in VR, those things that are more popular and make this technology really kind of justified from the user experience is where your body is present. So that's why one of the most successful game titles in virtual reality, Beat Saber, and actually the game that kind of broke through this story that VR is not working and became really successful title, is a game where you have two kind of Beat Sabers and you're beating the cubes that are flying at you because you have your body constantly involved. It's not about your brain, it's not about your mind, it's not about information, it's about having fun and dancing and synchronous movements. So I think that we really need to start thinking about the next iteration of the internet from the body perspective, what we do there, what we do together with other people. Do we go dancing? Do we go exploring some environments? Do we go and create a joint experience of the meditation? So this is all the questions that a lot of people are thinking about for the next social iteration of virtual reality. And I'm very happy that at least partially I'm part of this movement, trying to find new formats for people to connect digitally in meaningful ways.
Definitely. And that sounds like a really rewarding role to have within it, because you're not only working alongside what the community and future generations want, but you're helping support people to make better decisions as well and be authentically true to themselves. So I think that's a really powerful position to be in. I think that's amazing.
I think most of the time it kind of comes down to the fact that the new generations, they are going to be absolutely natural in that. And if you see kids operating in VR headset, they get it just instantly. Like, you don't almost need to explain that. But because I'm working mostly right now in in the industrial sector, in kind of the applications for that for business. So I'm actually more educating people about virtual reality, because it's very important that older generations of those who are right now in the position of tech executives in different companies, they're not native to that, and it can be quite a stressful transition if you are just provided this device that you know nothing about, and you have to put it on your face, and what you're supposed to do is big and bulky, and you don't enjoy this experience. So in my job, I also make sure that it's the most comfortable and joyful transition, so people understand what are the benefits of this new medium, why it's important to potentially introduce their employees or team building activities to this new space, why it provides new opportunities, and it's not another fad that is going to go away in a year when their management forgets about this new fancy thing. That it really can create value for connecting people remotely in a different way. And mostly it's just, educating people how to get in and start exploring.
No, thank you for sharing that. That's great. And it actually brings us on really nicely to our next question. So with the emergence of other metaverses and alternative realities, both for business's sake and of course for normal society, there are many young women who will be trying to enter the industries to work in because they have a career vision that they would also like to partake in this journey to technology. What advice would you offer those individuals?
That's a great question. Thank you so much. So my main advice that this space and just the technology space in general is changing so quickly that don't try to kind of learn one thing and stop there. Just learn to learn constantly and evolve constantly. Even from the production perspective, the tools that were used in virtual reality, for example, 8 years ago, and it's a very short period of time, even for a career path, are completely different from what is available today. The process when content creation becomes more and more open, even for those who don't code, don't create hard code, don't create hardware, even if you are not coming from the math background and you're not writing code, you can still work here. You can, because it's one thing to create piece of code, but without people who would be using this code, educating how to use that, creating content, it doesn't make any sense. So that's why this industry can only grow when more people come who would be interested to create experiences for other people, to guide them through those experiences. And all of these jobs, they do not require any hard skills in coding. Of course, it's really beneficial if you can do that as well, but be prepared that even from the kind of the content creation perspective, the tools that you are using today might not be the tools that you will use in 2 years. And in 2 years, you will need to adjust, because AI would make the thing that you're doing today automatic. But then it does mean that you will have even more power and more free time to create something great. The space is evolving so quickly. We are truly still in the very beginning. The hardware will be evolving at least for the next 10 years. And I think that only in this period of time we will start to see meaningful interactions in massive with massive audiences. Because right now, for example, in the space where I work, it's social interactions in virtual environments. For the majority of the applications, the limitation for people that can be in one virtual environment, in one virtual instance, is between 70 and 100 users on average. So we are still talking about quite small communities and how to handle them. We're learning on those cases how to organize events in those virtual spaces with the smaller groups. So in a way, we are ready when the next iteration of the technology allows us to have thousands of people in one environment and to create experiences for them. And what would that mean if people can work remotely and run large companies with those technologies? So it's very interesting space, and definitely there is a place for passionate people, people who are ready to learn on daily basis, and for those who really want to see how our communication will be evolving.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as you mentioned, with future generations coming in, more people will be entering the field. But I think, much like fintech, from an outsider perspective, the VR industry seems to be very like male dominated. Why do you think that is? And how do you think we could potentially begin to change that dynamic?
I think that, well, VR industry, it's really hard to take it out from the broader tech narrative, from my perspective, because for many companies, and I think that Facebook, Meta now is definitely leading the way in that they are stating that the metaverse in different shapes or form, something that still doesn't exist and we don't fully understand what it is, but it's the future of digital communication in virtual spaces, let's say. They want to see their technologies evolve there. And because the majority of tech companies has proclaimed that this is their future, the male domination in those tech companies is gradually transitioning to those fields as well. But I would say that from my perspective, and this is the perspective of, so I'm mostly working with artists. I'm working with a lot of independent, smaller companies. There are a lot of teams that are led by women, especially because I think women are very passionate about content and creating some experiences and creating meaningful experiences and creating about storytelling in general. And I've seen very powerful stories led by women, experiences led by women in the space, and hopefully it continues. One example, great example that this industry brings, it's a very the person that is really iconic in this industry. Her name is Nani de la Peña. She is called godmother of VR. VR has a lot of relatives, but she is the godmother because she was working in the university lab with virtual reality technology in throughout 200s, and in 2012 she was invited by Sundance Film Festival to bring her groundbreaking immersive journalism work to Sundance Film Festival. And partially in a way, that's where the Oculus headset kickstarted, because in her lab at the time, there was an intern. His name was Paul Merlecki. And they had a task to bring virtual reality piece to the festival. But at that time, VR was a super expensive technology that was only available in the lab, that was connected to the whole kind of university laboratory. You cannot just take it and bring it somewhere. It's a multi-million-dollar equipment. So that's the beautiful story where the Oculus headset started, that was sold later for $2 billion to Facebook. So there are absolutely magnificent women in this industry, and a lot of them are doing really important work from the empathy and storytelling perspective. But we definitely need more women also on the hardware side, on tech management side, and on the business decisions in the industry for sure.
Absolutely. So as quite a senior figure within your organization, what advice would you offer to senior members from other organizations to create a more inclusive environment that welcomes in female figures?
It's a very good question. I think that it's hard to judge, and I think that the majority of the organizations that we work with, they understand that the more representation they have makes them more successful at the end, because I think that it is becoming a kind of known statement that your company would benefit if actually more voices are represented, because at the end you want to target the market of everyone, and you want to be inclusive, and if your company wants to be successful, you want to tailor to different audiences and not only to the male audience, because it's not going to bring you anywhere. So you need to understand from the psychological perspective, from the consumption perspective, from the business perspective, what different audiences are thinking, and how to be successful with them as well. So it is important from the content perspective, because once again, we've learned the lesson that it's not enough to build a good hardware device. VR headset is nothing. It stays on the shelf. No one is using that. If there is no valuable content, if there is no reason to come back to this headset on a regular basis. And for that, it's very important that this content is speaking to different audiences. So my advice would be just to give it a try and give responsibility to some female colleagues that you have. From my experience, because I am coming and I started my career in a female-led organization, so it was always a very natural thing. In a way, I'm coming from a bit of twisted society where there were a lot of females in senior positions in media. And it's maybe that led me also in different other organizations to freely speak and to kind of come up always with some suggestions, because it's very natural for me, because I'm not expecting that I will be treated differently because I'm a woman. And yeah, I'm just inviting everyone to be passionate about what you do, and if something that you're doing is interesting to you and you really see where the value is coming from, and you really want to stand up and talk about that, you should just do that, because that's the only thing that I would advise you to do. That would lead you to the place where it's not about gender, it's not about in a way your background, but it's about bringing your experience and really shaping the future of the industry or of the company where you're present. And as soon as your colleagues would value you as a leader and as person who can really stand up and do something and introduce some great ideas, then it becomes the place of change where you're confident enough to speak and be seen in any room with any gender balance, I would say.
Yeah, beautifully put. You said something about how you wouldn't expect your gender to be a contributing factor to how you're either treated or perceived in the workplace. But in your experience so far, was there ever a time period where you felt like your gender had maybe put you at a disadvantage, or you were treated differently because of your gender? I think it's something so many people still face to this day.
Absolutely. And I think that it is very important, especially in the beginning of the career. I was lucky because in the beginning of my career, I was working with female leaders. So it was kind of logical and natural for me that gender is not the most important thing. But I was lucky to work in this specific organization. That wasn't true for the rest of the companies in even the same field. So of course I saw that, and I was in the rooms where you definitely understand that you are not expected to take the lead in the conversation because it's male dominated. probably technology sector is one of those sectors for sure, where it is still quite common that the room conversation is dominated by male voices. I think that I was lucky to be already in the position of my career where I'm not shying away from that, and I don't really care whether I'm expected to be speaking or not. I really don't care because if you kind of people in the group or people in the work environment don't want to listen to me because of my gender, I don't think that I will be fitting in this workspace. And I think that right now we're in such a competitive space in the industry. So many companies are trying to bring new ideas, but there are a lot of challenges because developing new technologies is expensive. You need a lot of funding to build a team. It really needs to create this culture internally of working on one product and working as a team. I think that it's long due that we just overcome those gender questions and start working more respectively towards us as human beings with our own struggles, with our own interests, and with other own backgrounds. Because at the end, the richer the background of your employees as a whole, the better it is for the company. And it's not only about gender, it's about bringing different nationalities so they can also help you to understand different mentalities, maybe different religions, different holidays, different anything. Like the more diversity you have, the better potential result would be, because you will not be isolating yourself to only one group of people that you're talking to. And then potentially your product in a very highly competitive space will also attract and speak to more audiences.
Yeah, that's absolutely brilliant. I love that. And I also love your outlook where you're just like, I don't really care what you think of me, because whether you see me as a woman, whether you see me as whatever, I'm still going to say what I need to say, and you can take it or you can leave it. But I think that's such an amazing outlook to have. And I think you giving that advice will also help other women who maybe don't have that confidence just yet, but hopefully watching something like this may help them. So that's fantastic.
Hopefully.
Thank you for sharing.
Maybe we can do a practice in virtual reality, because just imagine the next time you're speaking that you're not a woman or male, you're just a pink unicorn, and next to you there is an avatar of the hot dog or mushroom. Like, how are you going to change the dynamics if you are somebody else that you chose to be today? Because it's not in a distant future. It is reality right now. We can go and hang out in VR chat in all of those different avatars. So how would that change the dynamics in the team relationship if you are choosing to be this avatar today?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I cannot wait to make myself into a purple unicorn in VR. I'm particularly excited for that element. But to round us off, actually, I think VR has been around for a little while, but I think despite that, there are still numerous people who don't necessarily understand what it does, how it will be impacting their lives and so forth. So what would you recommend that newbies would look at to get a better understanding, to learn about what new VR projects are happening that are going to be entering our society for the better?
It's a very good question. So I think that definitely one of the main challenges in virtual reality is distribution and discovery, like where to start, where to go, what to find. So first of all, there are quite a lot locations that are offering right now to experience some virtual reality content. Look out for museums, because from my perspective, a lot of narrative, really art kind of VR projects that can allow you to feel the importance of this as a medium, not only for entertainment and gaming, but also for deeply connecting with the story. They're actually represented in a lot of or supported by the museums in potentially your cities. The next step would be kind of, if you're interested in a VR device and trying that out and maybe owning one, the market leader, of course, right now is Quest from Facebook Meta, because they, with the price tag of $300 as where they started, it is definitely the most competitive device. But I would also suggest to consider Pico as an alternative, because both of those devices are great from the perspective that they give you already the VR experience without the necessity to connect your headset to a powerful gaming computer, because that increases the price quite significantly. And then from the experiential perspective, I would suggest to consider joining one of the VR communities. Don't just go into VR chat, but maybe find some space or event, virtual event, that you would be interested in. So there are great platforms out there. You can check out Engage, the platform that we work with. It has some public-facing events where you can join a meditation or a different language classes, because it's more enterprise and education platform. You can go to VR chat, but please be careful to find a dedicated community where you know that you're coming to the event and you would meet real people that you would be able to engage with. Altspace, the platform owned by Microsoft, also has quite a lot of public-facing events that you can join, from meditations to stand-up comedy clubs. Just having this experience of being in the presence with other people in the room in real life would definitely give you this new layer to the reality that already exists. If you are not ready to take a step further and go yourself, I would definitely recommend to watch a great documentary. It's called We Met in Virtual Reality. It is currently streaming on HBO. The documentary was acquired after premiering at Sundance Film Festival this year. It's coming from a great young independent documentary filmmaker, Joe Hunting, who started making his shorts during the pandemic, because he just met the community of people in VR chat, and he started documenting that. So that documentary just gives you a sense of how people already find their connections and some of their life passions in virtual reality. And potentially it would lead you to be inspired and join one of the communities, and maybe to find your representation in this world.
Thank you, Alina. That's great. This has been really insightful, and I'm really grateful for you joining us and sharing your outlook and your experience. It's going to bring a lot of really creative and unique change, which I think is really exciting. So I'm really, really grateful for you coming and sharing your expertise. It's been amazing.
Thank you so much for inviting. Once again, with great potential comes great danger. So we always need to remember that there are, at the moment, a lot of ethical questions that the industry needs to battle. So in a way, I'm happy and I'm glad that it's not becoming mainstream right now and too quickly, because we are still not ready to understand a lot about our virtual interactions and how to make them safe and how to make them secure. Because in a way, everything that is happening digitally, good or bad, is an extension of our reality. We do have a lot of disturbing and awful things happening in reality. We do not want to bring them further. How do we structure that so it's not becoming a dystopia very quickly? That's another big challenge. So, but I'm just in general very excited that there is an opportunity for people to connect in meaningful ways, and I'm trying to explore what can we build and how we can introduce people to the space so they create for good and not for bad.
Yeah, well put. I think, like you said, enjoy the escapism, but just be careful. I think that's something that's really important for everyone to keep in mind. But no, thank you. It's been so interesting. I absolutely love it. The most interesting ones I've had.